Hello, welcome to another tutorial video. So now we're going to look at the falling leaves. Again, we're going to analyze it with a smile. Very short poem, really strong idea coming through, very powerful. We start with structure, and basically this whole thing is one long sentence. If you actually look all the way through, you've just got commas, 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 and only one full stop, because we're being invited on this long developed thought of this moment, what she's seen, and then what she's actually linked it to ultimately. So she wants us to follow in the train of thought, and that's why it just stays as one long sentence of her perspective and her thoughts on what the deaths in war could be likened to. It starts and ends with images of death, although not directly. So here we've got the brown leaves dropping, and we've got the snowflakes falling. And obviously then there's the final reference to the Flemish clay area of Belgium, where the majority or a lot of fighting happened in the First World War. We've got the enjambment, which allows us to kind of stop and consider and think about things as she's actually talking about them or seeing them, so that we're kind of paused in the moment. I saw the brown leaves dropping from the tree in a still afternoon, and I wandered slowly thence for thinking of the gallant multitude. And so again, the enjambment in all those cases, it just really helps us kind of stop and consider what's about to come and join her in her imaginings and what she's seeing. And also we've got a very complicated rhyme scheme going through this whole piece. You can work it out again yourselves, but basically the complication of it is to give it a very natural feel, like a moving feel, the kind of the natural rhythms and cadences we have in the sounds of nature, etc., rather than that something that's kind of man-made and limited in a certain way, as normal A B C D C D rhyme scheme would be. This one's a lot more developed than that. And we've also got it's almost generally 6 syllables, and then 10 6 syllables and then 10 syllables in a line. I think there's 1 or 2 exceptions to that, but generally the 6 and 10. So it's kind of like again, something short, something long, which kind of shows again just a reflection of the kind of thought and what it means, which is basically what this whole poem is about. She's a thought, she sees something, and then she talks about what it means. We'll move on then to the meanings. So first of all, meaning we got the idea of death, which is dropped in all the way through, which is, we've got the wiping out, and obviously the gallant multitude who die, and they're slain, and then we've got the snowflakes falling, and obviously the brown leaves dropping. So there's lots of ideas here about death and death of the soldiers, and obviously a death that's not at its time, and perhaps a brave but foolish death, and quite a violent death as well, with the phrase wiping. We've got war from another perspective. Here we're just looking at not perhaps one side over another or the futility, etc. We're just thinking more about the masses of death, just people dropping like leaves. Anytime you walk around during autumn, you see just thousands of millions of trees just all over the place, and obviously likening them to the falling leaves just shows again the great numbers of people who are actually dying. And this is from someone who I don't think she was a pacifist. I think in the First World War she was an objector, but in the Second World War I think she supported it. But here we have the idea that she's just looking at it from the perspective of just this loss of human life, not with any nothing damning about it. It's just even the tone, maybe I should say, is very, very different. Maybe not the perspective of itself, because obviously the waste of life, which is the next meaning point, obviously comes across, and we're looking at that's really shown through the word multitude. The amount of people actually dying, and this could refer to the amount from both sides maybe, and not just one side. And here we've got the no wind had actually stirred them, and which kind of shows it was unnatural, because normally when we have the falling leaves, they kind of fall like sometimes in a breeze, you could say, but here there's no wind, which kind of reflects the unnatural situation of them falling, and then the unnatural situation of man to be at war on such a mass scale. And that was my last point. There is the war, the idea of war being unnatural, And obviously here the fact that they're slain as well, and they're not slain by the normal things, some kind of disease or illness. They're slain by other men and machines killing them. And obviously again they're strewed. They're just kind of left, go gunned down or whatever it may be. Obviously, however they died, and obviously the idea of strewed and gunned down is very important for the First World War, which was just setting up like a few hundred meters apart and then just gunning each other to death. It's terrible waste of life. We look at images then, what types of scenes are presented, and obviously we get the idea of death coming through again from all the colours, etc. Sorry, not the colours, the colour of the leaves, and obviously the word dropping and the wiping out and the slain. So death comes through to us again and again and again, but it comes through in very soft images, kind of comparing it to like a cyclical part of nature, and obviously what happens, and just its place in the scheme of things, and maybe this is kind of man's nature to do this to each other. Then we got the image of no wind, which is very interesting because autumn we'd expect to be a little bit colder, and that's why there's brown leaves during that time. But here obviously something is missing, and the wind whirling them or whistling to the sky, it doesn't seem to have, all of that is missing in this poem, but she goes to great lengths to actually talk about it, and that actually stresses the idea of how unnatural their deaths are in that situation. And also the image of the cause of death, by mentioning the cause that doesn't take them, then obviously it kind of highlights all the more the cause that does, because these two here are obviously huge killers, and that's how people are expected to die, or more often than not die. But obviously when a war comes into the frame, then things are very different. So the language we've got very graphic language in the wiping out. It's a reference not only to the snowflakes, as they like snowflakes obviously falling and covering up part of the day, seemingly covering up part of the day. It's obviously a reference to the soldiers dying en masse, and whole battalions being wiped out, which is again what happened in World War One in particular. Moving on, we've got the alliteration and onomatopoeia in the wind whirled them whistling. So we've got lots of sounds there just to kind of give us a real evocation of, just to really drive that home and make it more ever present in our minds. And again, the contrast of actually describing something really well and it not, and describing its absence, just makes it all the more stark. And again, this is really very powerful, going along with this different perspective that we're taking all in all, that the poet's taking all in all. We've got the word multitude as well, which kind of shows the great amount. So it's huge, this brave amount of people, a massive amount of people, which just signifies for us the great numbers of people that died. So what's the effect on the reader then? Well, it kind of makes us question or kind of consider our own ideas of war. How do we feel about it? What do we compare it to? How do we put it in a frame of reference for ourselves? What reminds us of it? It makes us think about the amounts of the dead soldiers, and to be compared in this way to leaves dropping. And obviously here we're just referencing the First World War because of the because obviously the line here, the Flemish clay, the reference to Brussels. But when we think about so many other wars, that have been fought throughout time, and the amount of people that have actually been killed, it really, really does stack up. And then we've got the idea, I misspelled that. We've got the idea as well of the cycle of life and nature. The trees will fall, etc., and the snowflakes will fall, and maybe in that same way, men were meant to fall. In whichever way it was decreed for them, or their lives actually took them to, which in this case was through war. So yeah, there's lots of other things that you can pick out from them, but that should be a good start to get you going.